Namaste and welcome to a very special episode of the Bharat Varta podcast. I have with me today actor, writer, and social entrepreneur Kunal Kapoor. We're going to talk about his journey and how he gets to play these different roles both on screen and off the screen. So, without further ado, welcome Kunal. Thank you so much for making the time.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much, man. Lovely being part of the show.
Awesome, great to have you. Kunal, I spoke about various roles in the introduction, but help us understand how this journey from Bollywood to Keto happened.
Uh, I was working I was working with a number of NGOs in the social space and working very closely with them. This was about 2010, 2011. And I found that there were a number of challenges that these NGOs were facing. The first big challenge was that the cost of fundraising was very, very high, sometimes as high as 50, 60%. And I felt like that was very unfair. I felt like more money needed to go to the people that actually needed that money, right? The second big challenge for these NGOs was that how do you reach out to new donors? Because once you've reached out to your donor for a particular cause and for a particular thing that you're doing, it's very difficult to reach out to them immediately and ask them for another donation.
Right.
You need to reach out to new donors.
Right.
And thirdly, I found that the whole ecosystem of social giving in our country, I felt wasn't geared towards being inclusive, in the sense that when you looked at the whole social system here, the social giving ecosystem, you felt like it was for a certain sort of people, the whole NGO space, the social space. It had a certain seriousness and gravity attached to it, because of which a lot of people who wanted to get involved felt like maybe this is not for me.
Right.
Whereas when I looked at the ecosystem out west, it was very different. There was a lot of young people involved. There were lots of celebrities involved, sports people. People were running marathons, having garage sales. So the way they went about raising the money was a lot of fun. And I felt like if we wanted to get young people involved in this country, in the social space, we had to make it fun. And we had to speak the language that they speak. So these were the thoughts that I was sort of grappling with. And I happened to meet Varun Sheth, who's the co-founder. And he was grappling with similar thoughts. And we got chatting and we realized that it would be very powerful if we could use technology to build a bridge between people that can help and people that need help.
Right.
So that, I often came across people that wanted to help and were like, I'd love to donate, but I don't know where to give the money. I don't know if the money is going to the right place or not. So if you built a bridge between people that can help and need helping and made it very easy and transparent, we felt like it could be something that was powerful. And that's how Keto happened. I mean, Keto is an abbreviation for Key to Tomorrow, because we felt like the democratization of capital was really actually the key to tomorrow, because very few people had access to capital. And we wanted to make sure that, we change that. So that's how Keto happened.
Fantastic. And you've done some great work with Keto over the last few years, right? I mean, it's one of the largest crowdfunding platforms in Asia at this point of time, right? How has the journey been like? I mean, from idea to execution to where you are right now at this point of time, what has changed, and what are the things that keep you going?
Well, it's challenging. It's been challenging for sure. It's not been easy. I don't think neither an actor's life nor an entrepreneur's life. The similarities, they both look glamorous from the outside, but there's a lot of hard work that goes into it behind the scenes. And especially with something like crowdfunding, because when we started in 2012, it wasn't something that was very popular. Very few people knew about crowdfunding. So it was a very long journey to not only educate people that were going to give on a crowdfunding platform, but also people that were going to raise. Because even like NGOs didn't know that something like this exists, where you can actually go out there and raise money for a project that you're doing. So we had to actually go and educate each NGO individually and tell them that, look, there's something like this that exists. And it started off with just me and Varun, actually. We didn't have an office. Our office was a small space in Varun's dad's office. And so, yeah, it was challenging to begin with. And in fact, we needed to raise money as well to obviously hire people, grow the team, get our own office. And it was very difficult to get investors on board because, like I said, nobody really understood what crowdfunding was. And I had a very interesting experience with an investor at that point of time. We went to an investor and he said, "Why are you doing this? You're an actor, and you should start maybe a platform like Flipkart, or do something which is more in line with what you do." And he said,
Right.
"Look, Indians are not charitable,
Hmm.
and Indians don't give, so I don't think this is going to work in India." And we had this meeting with him, and we were leaving, and he stopped me and he said, "Look, I just want to tell you this is that what I've learned in my years as an investor is that it doesn't matter whether I believe in your idea or not. What really matters is whether you believe in your idea or not. And
Nice.
if you believe in it enough, then 10 years down the line, I'll look back and I'll say, I wish I had believed in the idea then."
Right.
And sure enough, 6 years later, he invested in the company.
Oh,
Uh,
fantastic.
so it's been a journey of a lot of challenges, a journey of lots of good times as well, and lots of learning.
Fantastic. So these behaviors that you're trying to change, right? I mean, whether it is, let's say, charity as such, or, I mean, getting people to donate on a particular platform, or getting, the other side, which is the NGOs and so on, to enlist on a platform, so on and so forth. What have you seen in terms of the behavior itself? I mean, do you see more and more people doing this? I mean, is there a significant shift in the behavior that you've noticed?
So there's a huge shift.
Right.
The good thing is that a lot of people that come and donate on Keto are people that are actually donating for the first time.
Hmm.
So, when we ask them questions and stuff, we often do these surveys to find out what's going on. And we've realized a lot of people that have donated have never donated before. So these are people, like I said, that may have had the desire to do so earlier, but didn't know how to go about it.
Hmm.
And I think a platform like Keto has actually created the avenue for that, right? I think that's one of the aspects. The other thing is that we've noticed is that when somebody donates on the platform, some percent of them are likely to actually start a campaign on the platform as well when they need the money.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
you have people not only donating, but these are also people that then, in the future, start a campaign for themselves or for somebody when they have the need. So I think that's a huge shift in the mindset, which is that from not knowing that something like this exists to donating on a platform like this, and then eventually raising money on a platform like this. That's one of the aspects. The other thing that we've noticed is that earlier when we started off, there was some sense of shame attached to the fact that you were asking strangers for money. That we've seen is changed over the last the 8 years that we've been working as a
Right.
platform. Because now you see a lot of people around you that have donated, a lot of people around you that have raised, people that are similar to you, people that come from similar backgrounds that you have, raising money on a platform like Keto. So I think when that happens, that sense of shame goes away because you're like, he's doing it and it's completely fine. He's doing it and it's completely okay. So there's no reason that I can't do it.
Right, right. I had one question that I thought I'd ask you about starting from scratch again, right? So when you started Keto, in many ways, I mean, you were famous and you were an established actor, so to speak, right? So how was it like to, start again from scratch? I mean, like, I'm sure, these investor meetings and whatever that you did would not have been a walk in the park, right? So how was it like to start up from scratch again?
I never looked at it as something that was honestly difficult or frustrating because tech has been something that I've been very interested in. So the social space again is something that, I've had a great affinity to. I've been involved with, like I said, a number of NGOs. So I was looking at it more as a learning to understand how the tech space works, to understand how we can better ourselves. So I never looked at it as something that was frustrating. And in fact, I think being an actor just made it far easier because if you, if as a individual that's not famous, you call somebody up and you say that I want to have a meeting with you for a crowdfunding platform, the chances that they will give you that meeting right away is very, very remote. But when you call them up and they know that you're an actor, they're far more interested or inclined in listening to what you have to say.
Right.
So a friend of mine put it very interestingly. He said keto would have grown anyways. It's like bodybuilding. It would have become strong anyways. It would have built muscle anyways. But having an actor as a co-founder is like bodybuilding with steroids.
Right.
The process happens far better. Like I said, being an actor just made it far easier to reach out to people and get that important meeting. And I think people are also far more patient in explaining to you
Right.
what they think is right about the model or what they think is wrong about the model. So
Right.
for me, the learning, it was never something that was, I was like, oh God, I'm starting all over again. I've got to face rejection now. Those are things that I didn't think about. No.
Right. So it was more excitement than anxiety in some
It
sense.
was, yes. It was.
Right. So there's this theory that fundraising platforms, right, use a lot of guilt to market the platform as such, right? And I'm a marketer, and I think it's fair game. But I wonder what your take is on this.
Well, I don't think guilt marketing is the right word for it, because I'll tell you, most of the campaigns that we have on a platform like Keto are medical campaigns, right?
Right.
And most of the people that are raising money for these medical campaigns are in a situation where it's life or death. So you have somebody that's fighting cancer. You have somebody that needs a transplant right away. You have somebody who has a life-threatening disease, a child or an old person. So it's usually a very difficult situation. What we are doing as a platform is only putting out their story. So if the story in itself is a story of life and death, then we are just only putting out that story honestly. It's not like we are making something up to make people feel guilty and give money, or it's not like we are enhancing the pain that people are in so that you feel like, oh my God, I really want to help this person. We are actually honestly just putting out the story of that person.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I sell enterprise software, and a lot of the times we are tasked with creating a burning need, right? And we have to manufacture all of these scenarios, and I completely relate, right? I mean, you should. I think it's totally fair. I mean, I have.
Yeah, and like you're saying, there's a need to manufacture a burning need.
Yeah.
But in the space that we work in, there's always an urgent need.
Right.
It's something that is manufactured. Because if somebody doesn't get money in the next 6 weeks, they might not make it.
Okay.
So there really is an urgent need. It's not something that you have to make up and market to people.
Right. Right. Let's take a step back and look at philanthropy itself, right? How it compares in India versus the West. While things are changing and everything, in the West, it's a lot more organized, right? I mean, whether you look at something like, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, or, even if you look at some smaller community organizations and so on and so forth. How do you see this evolving in India?
Well, it's definitely changing. I mean, it's far more structured now than it was even 10 years back.
Okay.
Also, there's a greater amount of research in how the funds are raised and how they're deployed. So you have understanding of the relationship between the funds raised and their deployment in a far greater way. But I think we're still very, very far away. Personal giving, philanthropic giving in this country is gone up from, I think, about 15,000 crores in 2010 to about 55,000 crores in 2018. And that's driven by individuals. But when you take a very close look at that, you'll realize that there's just a couple of individuals that are driving that. So a large chunk of that is coming from somebody like Azim Premji. So it is growing. It is changing for sure. We've seen huge changes in a platform like Keto, but I feel like we still have a long way to go uh,
Right.
to be able to reach the level that the West is at. And of course, I mean, it's unfair to just compare ourselves to the West because they have their incomes, their standard of living is far greater than ours is. So it also is about economic growth, and it's also about uh, people becoming richer on an individual level. But I mean, I see changes for sure, but I would hope that those changes were faster.
Right. Yeah. I guess, I mean, it's a natural curve as well, right? I mean, you take care of yourself, then you take care of your family and friends and maybe the
Sure,
community and look beyond that, I
sure.
suppose, right? Have you looked at any CSR initiatives, any institutional funding, charity, and so on and so forth? Are you planning to like incorporate those things in the platform as well?
Well, we do work with some institutions, and we do work with some corporates.
Okay.
Uh, it's not a large part of our business. It's not a large part of the money that's raised on the platform, but it is something that we do work with a number of corporates.
Right. So on that note, what are some of the initiatives that you're excited about going forward with Keto, and maybe you could talk about crowdfunding platforms in general, right? What are some things that you're excited about going forward?
Well, what I'm really excited about is like we've been talking about, is that I feel like we've only scratched the surface now. Crowdfunding is just something that is becoming popular in this country.
Right.
Right now, most of the fundraisers on the platform have been from urban centers.
Okay.
But now we're expanding to the smaller towns, then hopefully to the villages, because these are the places that need the help the most. So that's something that I'm very excited about, is to reach out to larger parts of the country. Secondly, I feel like an industry like crowdfunding is very, very important uh, in the world that we live in, and the country that we live in, because the whole health space and the medical space in this country is very underserved. So there was a survey, I think it was in 2017, which said that 200 million people have been pushed into poverty only because they couldn't pay their medical bills.
Right.
So you have people that are selling off their property, taking loans, selling off their jewelry, and these are loans that they can obviously never repay. So they get pushed into poverty, right? And then on the other hand, you have huge advances in medical technology. So you have gene editing, you have robotic surgeries, you have nanoparticles implanted into your blood eventually, which will give you real-time updates. I mean, I was reading a book called Lifespan, which said that death is a disease like any other, and very soon we'll be able to overcome death.
Yeah.
Right? So you have great medical advancement, but on the other hand, you have people that don't even have access to basic medical needs, right? And that's where I think an industry like crowdfunding becomes very important, because it really is about the democratization of capital.
Right.
And I feel like all this medical advancement is not good enough if it's not reaching everybody, and if it's restricted only to a certain section of society. So I think crowdfunding has the power to change that. Like I said, it is about the democratization of capital. It has the power to make sure that capital reaches the most underprivileged people. And I feel like when we can do that, we can make a big change.
Right. So recently I was talking to a healthcare entrepreneur, and one of the things he said really stuck out. So he said that, look, I mean, I'm running a business and it's profitable and whatever, and that's a kick in itself. But what also gives me that additional kick is the fact that I'm actually doing good, right? If I succeed,
Right.
people are people's lives improve and so on and so forth.
Sure.
I'm sure you must feel the same way about Keto as well, right? I'm sure, like, all of your on-screen success is incomparable. But then, I mean, each of these lives that you're touching through Keto on a daily basis, that must be a kick in itself.
All the time. I mean, in fact, very often people say, which is your favorite campaign? And I'm like, all of them are great, because where else do you see, we live in a world where we are constantly bombarded with bad news.
Yeah.
You turn on the news and it's bad. You go to social media and there's just you just read bad news. And then you have a platform where there's thousands of people from across the world coming together to help someone they don't know.
Right.
And you're like, my God, there's so much goodness in the world. So it's not about one campaign, or it's not about which is your favorite campaign, or it's just every campaign is so heartening to see, because you're just seeing people just coming together, and
Strangers.
you realize how powerful that can be when people come together for goodness.
Right.
Uh,
So, I'm going to push you on this. So, any of your favorite anecdotes from the last few years that you can think of?
Favorite anecdotes?
Yeah.
I mean, there have been campaigns that I've been very, very sort of proud of. There was a campaign which I, in fact, shot a video for and gave my voice to. And this was a campaign for these 4 athletes, and they were going to the Commonwealth Games and the Asian Games. And there was not enough money for their training and equipment. And we ended up raising money for them. And a couple of them went and won medals at the games.
Fantastic.
At the Commonwealth Games and the Asian Games. And they actually wrote in to say, thank you so much. This could have never happened without the support that you gave us. So that was something that was also linked to national pride. So it felt even more special.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. So let's shift our gaze a little bit towards movies. Again, as I said, I can't not ask an actor about his acting in the movies, right? So you've been around for about 15 years now, but you've done very few films, right? You've been extremely selective about this. How do you go about selecting a particular project that you'd want to work on?
Usually, people ask you how do you describe Kunal Kapoor? How would you describe, people ask you, how do you describe yourself, right? And the one thing that's been, I think, constant in my life has been curiosity. I think that's the core of who I am, is I'm constantly curious about everything that's happening around me. And I think that curiosity sort of plays into how I choose the parts that I do as well. For me, acting is a character is nothing but his point of view of the world. So we are different because your point of view of the world is very different from mine. We look at things in a different sort of way. So every character has a different point of view. Every person has a different point of view of the world. I love playing characters that have very diverse point of views. So a point of view which is very different from mine. So a politician in Kashmir would have a very different point of view from a hacker in Berlin. And a boy growing up in Chandni Chowk would have a very different point of view from a warrior in Kerala. So for me, what makes it, what makes me choose a part is that, am I getting a chance to explore a whole different point of view? The point of view might be completely different. I mean, there have been times when I don't agree with the point of view of the character at all, because it's very different from my point of view, or how I was brought up. But that's what makes it exciting, is to look at it from a completely new set of eyes, look at the world from a completely new set of eyes.
Right.
And I think that for me is really important.
Yeah. I mean, it must be super exciting to live all of these different lives and characters surreptitiously, right? And in fact, I mean, I was watching this Actors Roundtable. I'm not sure if you've seen this with Robert De Niro, Tom Hanks, and a few others, right? All stellar actors. Yep. And, I think one of the questions they were asked was, do you go home with these characters? Because you tend to, for us, when you watch some of these actors on screen, it seems so real, right? I mean, do you go home with these characters? And, if so, what is the consequence of that? How do you deal with it?
I don't know if you go home with the characters, but what definitely happens for me, at least, is that it gives me a chance to explore a different side of me. So it opens up a whole different, sometimes opens up a part of me that I didn't know. You know what I mean? Because if you're playing a character, playing a scene, you have to make it relatable to yourself. And to make it relatable to yourself, you sometimes have to go into parts of yourself which are not part of your daily life, right? So I don't know if you take the characters with you, but once they've opened up a part of you which you were not in touch with, that part of you stays, becomes a part of your day-to-day life, uh, or becomes familiar to you forever. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't take the character home, but the character helps me connect to a piece of myself,
Right.
which I may or may not have known existed.
Right. No, and especially if it's something which is negative, right? Because oftentimes, I mean, we think of ourselves as the heroes of our lives, right?
Sure,
Obviously, I mean, if you were to pick stories, all of us would want to be the heroes.
sure.
But then, I mean, I think there's this person called Dr. Jordan Peterson who says that, I mean, likely if you were in Nazi Germany, 99% chance you would be a Nazi, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's capacity for good and evil within all of us.
sure.
Tapping into some of those underlying sentiments within you must be like a revelation, right? I mean, it can't be easy, I would say.
Yeah, and we're talking about say Nazi Germany, right? And you're saying 99% of the people may have felt a certain way. Now you can't look at those people and say they were villains. They had the
Exactly.
reason.
Exactly.
You have to get into why they felt the way they felt.
Right.
What was it that swept them?
Right.
What was their, because they're all, most of them must have been rational human beings.
Precisely.
Most of them were educated human beings. So why were they thinking the way they were thinking?
Right.
So it's very important to not look at people as heroes or villains, but like I'm saying, is to try and understand what their mindset is, or what is their point of view towards the world that they live in.
Right.
I think that's really important.
Yeah. And do you find that the capacity to kind of evaluate, study some of those things is kind of going down right now in the culture that we exist? Because I feel like if you don't really understand their thinking, right, a villain is thinking as such, and just shut it down as saying that that's bad or that's not kosher or whatever it is. I mean, as humanity, we don't progress. We don't really get to
Absolutely.
understand that.
Yeah, and the thing is that I feel like across the world there's no space for discussion anymore. It's people are now divided along political ideologies, and the thing is that nobody's looking at somebody's action anymore. People are like, is this guy or girl part of my political ideology? If they are, then everything they do is right, and I'm going to support them. If they aren't, then everything they do is wrong, and I'm not going to support them. So there's really no place for judging someone's action.
Right.
It's now about judging: are you aligned with my political ideology or not aligned with my political ideology? And I think that's not a healthy place to be in. I think for growth, it's very important that discussions happen and understanding happens about why is somebody feeling a certain way. Why is somebody that looking at the world in a way that's completely different from how I look at it? That doesn't mean that they're irrational people, or that they're people that are evil. It's very important to try and understand what is it that is, what is the point of view of this person. So I feel like that's not happening, which is across the world, which is a bit like sad and is also a bit scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's very retail, right? I mean, it's all at a very political level. Any idea is not debated at a cultural or philosophical level.
Correct.
So, yeah, I mean, it tends to stagger at some point. We don't make progress on these ideas. We don't get to unravel some of these ideas and see them for what they are, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I'm saying is that you're not judging the idea. You're not judging a policy. You're just judging political ideology.
Right.
And I think that is not a nice place to be in.
Yeah, it's become a team sport, basically. It's your team versus my team, and then
Exactly.
Yeah. So on the same lines, right? I mean, so Bollywood makes up all of these stories, and those stories influence people, and you can argue which is which, right? I mean, is it a chicken and egg situation, whether Bollywood is influenced by the people or the people are influenced by Bollywood or cinema or art in general, right? Do you sense that there is like there's a lack of diversity in the stories that are coming out? I mean, do you think that, it's very skewed, or is it that, general perception tends to be skewed a different way?
No, I don't know. I mean, I've been hearing this, but the thing is that uh, as an actor, I mean, I started off in the movie industry as an assistant director in 1999.
Wow.
So I've been in the industry for a long time, and I feel like this is the best time for storytelling because the diversity of the stories now that you can tell and have an audience come and watch or through OTT platforms is the greatest that it's ever been. Uh, Earlier when you looked at the films, they were all about these aspirational NRI stories and, dancing in Switzerland. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that bad, that maybe that was the world that we lived in then. And, those were the stories that were needed then. But now I see so many stories that are completely different, you have stories where we're talking about women's menstruation. We're talking about somebody who we're talking about women's rights. We're talking about treating your daughters the way you treat your sons. We're talking about older couples having children. There's the stories I feel are really, really diverse, and that's because audiences now are willing to watch these stories. And the other thing that I find most interesting is that a lot of the stories that we're telling now are stories about people from India, the small towns, stories about heroes from India, not your typical heroes, but, heroes that you haven't heard of. And I feel like that is something that is very exciting because it's also a reflection of the country. Like I said, there was a time when all our stories were about these NRIs because it was all about aspiration and, wanting to be like the West. Now people want to hear stories from our land and our country and our culture. Is because we are turning inwards. We want to know more about our country. We're not. I feel like it's coming out of a sense of self. It's coming out of a sense of confidence in being Indian. It's coming out of young people that are very happy with their identity. So I feel like that's a great space to be in. So as an actor, hopefully I will produce films. As a writer, I feel like this is a really exciting time to be in the movies.
Right. Fantastic. You briefly touched upon OTT, right? I wonder if you could walk us through some of the, how the economics have changed because of these OTT platforms and so on and so forth.
I think, see, now you don't have to only depend on theatrical, right? You also have the OTT platforms, which, will possibly buy the rights for the film that you're doing. So it obviously opens up more revenue streams, which is great. The other thing that it does is that for a film that's on an OTT platform, you don't have to think about how well is this going to do on Friday? How many tickets am I going to sell? What's the weekend going to be like? Which is very liberating because then you can tell the stories that you want to tell. You don't have to put in an item song because, the songs have to become popular and then people have to come and watch the film.
Right.
You don't have to do any of that.
Right.
So you can tell very different stories. And I think also for actors, I mean, there was a time if you had two choices, which is that you were either in the movies or you were on television. So as an actor, if you weren't getting to work in the movies, you'd probably then move to television. Or if you were doing well in television, you'd probably become an actor in the movies. But now it's opened up a whole new space for actors. There's multiple platforms making lots of content. So as an actor, I don't think there's been a better time because you know that as an actor, you will have work.
Right. Right. And, I have to ask you this. Rang De Basanti was, is one of my favorite movies of all time, right? And it had a certain growing up sort of a feel to it, where it channeled a lot of the angst and, got people together and so on and so forth. It also had all of these stereotypes, right? I mean, like all of the students in the university, vigilante justice, activism, so on and so forth. So
Right.
do you relate to that movie at all? I mean, at this point of time, considering you made the movie, and now here we are in 2020.
Yeah, and in fact, I think most people that write in even now about Rang De Basanti say that they relate to it as much now as they did then. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't think the relatability has changed, and I think that's come out of something which is very important. I think you were talking about stereotypes, and I think it's very important that as film people we get rid of stereotypes when they're cultural, when they're religious, when they're demeaning, when they're gender based, when they're about a caste. It's very important that we don't use stereotypes to mock people, because we've done that very often in our movies. I think that's something that needs to stop. But sometimes stereotypes are employed and deployed in movies to create a connection with the characters immediately. Whether it's the movies or in literature, you'll find a lot of stereotypes, but you'll find that these stereotypes work. Because I think a lot of these stereotypes, which are character traits, come from people that we've seen around us. So Rakesh, when he was writing the film, wrote a lot of the characters that were written in the film were people that he had seen while he was in college. Similarly, even I, when I went to college, I went to college in Bombay, and we used to have this place called the Lukha Corner. It was called the Lukha Corner. And there were 8-9 people that ran the Lukha Corner. And these were people, when we were in college, we were 16, 17, and these were people that were 24, 25. Some of them had failed multiple times. Some of them had passed out but still hung out in the canteen.
Right.
And we used to all look up to them. We wanted, the DJs.
Yeah.
So, the reason that you still relate to somebody like a DJ is that because you've seen him in your personal life. So I feel like the reason that the film is still relatable is that the characters, situation that they find themselves in is very relatable even now.
Right. On that note, which is your favorite movie that you've made over the last 10 or 15? I'm sure you would have been asked this 1,000 times, but what are your favorite movies from the last 15 years of yourself, and you could name a few others as well?
Well, there's so many of them. I had obviously a fantastic, amazing time making Rang De Basanti. We had so much fun.
Right.
Aaja Nachle was a lot of fun to make as well. Love Shafte Chicken Khurana was a film that I was involved in the writing of. So that was a film that was very personal and very close to my heart. Veeram was a film that came to me when I had got completely tired of being typecast. I was put in a box, and I was like, you will get roles only from, only that fit into that box.
Right.
And I took a break, and strangely, my wife asked me, and a friend of mine asked me, what is the sort of role that you want to play? And I said, I'd love to play a warrior. I don't know why. Instinctively, I said warrior because a lot of my favorite films were characters that had been warriors. And so I hired a trainer, and I said, look, I want to look like a warrior. I don't have a film, but I want to look like a warrior. So I grew my hair out. I trained like a beast for 5 months. And 5 months later, I got a call from Jairaj sir, who's won the National Award twice, and he's this fantastic filmmaker. And he said, I'm making this film called Veeram, which is based on Kerala folklore and also on Macbeth. And for the last couple of months, every time I've thought of the character, I've thought of you. And I want the character to be a warrior. So I said, I'd love to meet you. And in fact, I've been thinking of playing a warrior for really long. And this is really strange that you would call and, say that you want me to play this character. And he said, the only thing is that I need to start soon enough. And I'm just wondering whether how much time you need to get into shape.
Right.
I said, well, I've been training for 5 months and you're ready to go. So it was a character that I sort of almost willed, I feel.
Right.
And which is why I really enjoyed the process of making the film. And also it was a character that came to me when I was always offered the good guy.
Right.
Suddenly there was a chance to play Macbeth, which was, this really tortured character. So that was something that was very special as well.
Amazing. So, we're living in exceptional times, right? This year has been tough on all of us, I would say. But I mean, I'm surprised how, all of us have coped as well, right? So,
Right.
what has this year taught you, Kunal, and how has your life changed this year?
I think it just taught me the value of simplicity, actually. I think, all of us are so busy running about and trying to accumulate things. And, you go for a holiday. I mean, I go for a holiday. I spend so much time buying clothes. And the last couple of months have been only a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. So you realize you actually don't need so many things that you thought you needed. So it's about simplifying things. It's also about valuing things that are important, like family, your friends, valuing relationships. I think that's something that has been a big learning for me. It's given me a chance to. I've always been very spiritually inclined. It's given me a chance to tap into that in a far deeper way. Uh, it's given me a chance to connect to that in a far deeper way. So that's been really special for me. And I think what I find around me uh, is people wanting to contribute and be kinder. Maybe it's because I'm related to a platform like Keto, but I find a lot of people just finding the need to be kind and contribute. And what I'm hoping is that once we are back to our lives, when this is over, these are things that we don't lose, which is simplicity and kindness. I think those are things that the world needs in large doses, and I hope that's something that we don't forget.
That's fantastic. I can totally relate to what you're talking about, especially the kindness aspect of it. In fact, I just tweeted this about 2 or 3 days back. I did about 5 or 6 laps around the apartment, and for some reason, I just thought I'll just lie down on the lawn. And it was about 10 seconds before someone just came up to me and checked, if things are all right. So, yeah, I mean, people seem to have that, amped up a lot more. So final question before we leave you. You seem to be on stealth mode on Twitter. You don't say much, but surely you're reading and noticing things and stuff. What are some of the things that you like to read about and learn about?
Well, what I find most interesting about Twitter is, and I intentionally follow a diverse uh, range of people. It comes down to what I was saying about curiosity, and it comes down to what I was saying about wanting to know diverse opinions. We live in a world, like we're saying, is that where we are so defined by this is my political ideology and I don't want to know what else is happening, and this is right and everything else is wrong. Now, what I find interesting about Twitter is you can follow people from all from different fields, and you can follow people from different ideologies, and really try and understand why people think the way they think and what their point of view is. So I find that is very interesting about Twitter, and I follow, like I said, a diverse bunch of people. I am on stealth mode is because, like we were speaking earlier, is that I feel like it's not a place for discussion.
You don't want to start a dumpster fire.
Yeah, it's a place for arguments. And, I don't want to get into an argument with somebody. I'd rather sit and have a discussion with somebody, right? So I post stuff only which I think is very important to say, and I post stuff which is related to Keto, and if I come across a campaign that I think is important and needs to be highlighted, I put that out. I sometimes put out my thoughts, but yeah, more or less, I don't find that it's a place that is constructive. Sometimes put out your thoughts, and which is why the stealth mode may be.
Right. Any books or podcasts that you would recommend?
Well, I just finished a book called Lifespan by David Sinclair. It's about, like I was saying, is that it's about how death is a disease, and we will soon find a cure for it. And I found that book really interesting. And I'm also reading a lot of Indian mythology, and I just finished this book called, which is based on Karna. That's the one I've just finished. I found that very interesting to read. So I'm reading a lot of Indian mythology as well at this point of time.
Interesting. All right, Kunal, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for making the time.
Lovely to speak to you, man. Take care and all the best. You're doing such a great job. All the best with it, and take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, Kunal. Thank you. Take care as well. Bye.
Bye, man. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. This podcast was brought to you by the team at Bharat Varta. If you liked this podcast, then don't forget to share, subscribe, and rate us on your favorite platforms. We're available on Anchor, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Breaker, YouTube, and a host of other platforms. We started Bharat Varta to facilitate long-form discussions on politics, policy, and culture. We don't necessarily endorse anything that was said in this episode. If you do wish to offer us any feedback on the content or anything else, do reach out to us on social media or get in touch with us on our website, www.bharatvarta.in. The links are in the description below. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.